Hey, Southern Nightmare listeners. I know it's been a while, so I wanted to post this bonus mini-episode to let you know about the new Southern Nightmare book. It's available now in paperback and ebook from Amazon stores around the world. It's a deeper dive into the Southside Strangler story, with some new interviews and research, plus photos, a timeline, and selected interview transcripts. This is the culmination of more than a year of research, and it's based on 50 interviews with homicide detectives, FBI agents, prosecutors, and friends and family of the Southside Stranglers victims. I was initially calling this a companion book to the podcast, but it really stands on its own and tells the full story of the first murderer in U.S. history who was caught using DNA evidence. If you're a Southern Nightmare fan, you're not going to want to miss this, because there's a lot of new material in there that we didn't have time to get into on the podcast. And it's also a great fall read for people who haven't started listening to podcasts yet, but enjoy true crime and mysteries. Jeff McKee, the morning DJ on Boomtown Richmond Radio here, recently did an interview with me about the book that I wanted to share with you. We talked about Southern Nightmare, as well as another true crime book I wrote several years ago about pinup model Betty Page. And we touched a little bit on Southern Nightmare Season 2. So here's Jeff interviewing me about Southern Nightmare. Thanks again for listening and for all your support. Please pick up the new Southern Nightmare book from Amazon wherever you live and leave a positive review. That will help us fund Season 2 so we can continue bringing you in-depth true crime stories from the American South.
Boomtown Richmond, timeless rock and roll pop. And so, I am Jeff. You must be Robin. Mm-hmm. And we have a special guest. And you can underline special. Because Richard Foster, I think you've hit the big time. I do. I think finally all your hard work is paying off.
Thanks,
Southern Nightmare. The podcast was magical.
Thank you very much.
Some people were so scared. I'm not pointing fingers, but Robin couldn't handle it. Mackenzie couldn't stop listening.
I lived through this time, and she didn't, so I think that's the difference there. But it was very scary. It brought back a lot of memories from being afraid to go out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I heard that a lot. I heard that from a lot of people.
Now, the podcast, you did a great job. So pick up the book. Here, go to the back page and read what you got there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Let's set the scene.
Sure, we'll do it. 30 years ago, the Southside Strangler terrorized the city of Richmond, Virginia, brutally raping and murdering women in their homes. Then the sadistic serial killer struck 100 miles to the north in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. This is the chilling and groundbreaking story of how the Southside Strangler became the first murderer in U.S. history brought to justice using DNA evidence. A milestone case for American criminal justice that also helped to launch the career of best-selling mystery novelist Patricia Cornwell. This companion book to the enthralling 2018, I gotta figure out what year I'm in, true crime podcast Southern Nightmare contains additional content not included in the podcast, as well as maps, photos, and interview transcripts.
Richard, wow. What, first thing that I knew you wrote, and I read it before we met, was the Betty Page book, which you say is going to be re-released.
Yes, it's getting ready to be re-released by Kensington Publishing in a 20th-ish anniversary edition coming out. I'm not exactly sure. Sometime in the next several months, I'm not sure. Probably by summer of next year.
And it's the iconic pinup Betty Page, who was everywhere and then disappeared, and you tracked her down.
Yeah, and I did that when I was in college. It was my first, that's kind of my little claim to fame. It got turned into an HBO movie called The Notorious Betty Page, that folks may have seen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Starring Gretchen Mol, which was a really cool movie. And if you wait all the way to the very end of it, you can see my name in the credits where they forgot to put it in.
I'm sure you did. But it was fabulous. And you know, I'm thinking it's a work of passion, because we all fell in love with Betty Page.
Sure.
And it was sort of a mystery, and you solved it.
Oh, that's what I loved about it. Is, I got into her because I was into comics. There were a lot of comic artists who used her as models, and she at the height of her fame in the 50s, she disappeared. Nobody knew what had happened to her, and I started tracking her down and found her. And I was like 20 years old, 21, something like that when I did it.
All right, so this really is your masterwork, though. And what made you choose this story?
About a year ago, I started talking with Style Weekly magazine. I had been a full-time reporter there in my 20s, the late 90s, and I had started talking with them about doing a podcast, a true crime podcast. And sort of became evident very quickly, we're in the middle of the 30th anniversary of the Southside Strangler case, and not just that, the first Richmond victim of the Southside Strangler was an employee at Style Weekly magazine. She had worked there 10 years before I did.
So full circle.
Yes, very much so.
And so it turned itself into the medium to express the story, turned into a podcast.
Yes.
And I remember on Facebook, you were teasing, and you were standing pictured in front of a microphone saying, "You're not going to believe what's next." Remember that?
I do remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very excited about it.
Now, if the notorious Betty Page was turned into a movie, this, to me, this is either Netflix or, is there any,
I'm hoping, we'll see what we can do with it. But yeah, it's an epic story. I mean, it's such a saga. I couldn't believe how big a story it is.
Oh, I know.
All right. Tell you what, it's Richard Foster and it's Southern Nightmare, and we'll link the website so you can get to the podcasts, which are beautifully produced. Or,
Get the book.
Get the book.
Yeah.
And we'll have that on our
Facebook
page
Boomtown
very
Richmond.
shortly. Or
It's on there now. I just did that.
You're amazing.
I know.
Okay. We'll take care of that and get back to Richard and actually tell the story. Boomtown Richmond, timeless rock and roll, pop, and soul. I'm Jeff, along with Robin Butter Bentley and Richard Foster, author of Southern Nightmare, The Hunt for the South Side Strangler. If you were here in Richmond at the time, it's unforgettable. Robin's still freaked out. Seriously.
Well, I listened to your first podcast and it scared me so because I remember being afraid to go out of the apartment.
When did this occur? It was
late 80s?
About 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was fall of 1987. So we're now, it's just now
Right.
we're in the 31st anniversary starting just a couple weeks ago.
So there's a brilliant podcast. And now we have the book. And this, as we were talking, this, to me, you've got 10 episodes and an amazing Netflix series, God willing. Because this just adapts the story. It adapts to almost any medium.
It is a compelling saga. I mean, it was an amazing story. I was overwhelmed at the response we got from the podcast. Who knew Australia is enormous on true crime? We got to number 11 on the podcast charts in Australia.
Wow.
We made the top 100 charts here in
People
America.
don't know that true crime is a category. People like Ann Rule, I mean, there are just, true crime is an enormous category. And this is so compelling.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself actually, as you dove into it and are, sort of were living it as it was happening, as you were examining how the story was told, did you find yourself, because I know you like the horror movies and stuff like that, did you find yourself getting a little freaked?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I will say I've had more than a couple of nightmares from doing this, and I mean, yeah, because it gets into you. I mean, it gets into your psyche, and
Yeah. What's the scariest thing to you that you discovered, or the creepiest?
I think it's just the vulnerability. I mean, we've got a lot being talked about right now. I don't know if you guys have seen this thing on Twitter where they're talking about women. What would you do if men could be banned from going out after 9? I mean, how sad.
We take a walk.
How sad.
Take a walk.
Yeah, but but just being a human being, thinking about the vulnerability. I mean, Dr. Fierro, who everybody knows is who Dr. Kay Scarpetta, the Trisha Cornwell character, is based on our former medical examiner. She was talking about how this is a violation of home and hearth. That you get home, you feel safe, it's your place. It is such a violation. And it's so horrible that these women were preyed upon in their own homes on top of what happened to them.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the scary. I mean, to me, that's one of the scariest parts.
I always get on my wife with, you know what, you didn't lock the door. But it's a beautiful day. Hello?
Yeah.
Why not lock the door?
Right.
So you actually published this yourself, which was quite an undertaking. This is your company.
Yeah, True South Media.
That must have been an education in itself.
Very much so. Yeah, I've learned a whole lot. My wife did the cover design. She's a graphic designer, and she did the layout. I did the internal and the editing, and it was a lot of work.
Richard, we are so proud of you.
Yeah.
So let's go over where you can pick this up, because in addition to everything else, it's really affordable. What do you sell this for? Seriously.
The paperback is $12.99. The
Give me a
ebook is
break.
$6.99. You can get it on Amazon in paperback or ebook. You can pick it up here locally in Richmond at Fountain Books or Chop Suey Books.
So it's Southern Nightmare. It's Richard Foster, and we're so proud of you. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I think this is it. I really do. I think the next step is you find a way to turn this into some visual, just the visual medium, either a movie or something on Netflix or an Amazon or something like that. You just have to, and you know it. You working on anything else right now?
Well, I'm trying to get season 2 of Southern Nightmare started up. We're looking at stories and talking to media partners and trying to see if we can get that moving. We've got some story ideas.
Unfortunately, there are always grisly, scary, detective work kind of, because really you are, and with Betty Page and with this, you turned yourself into, if there was a movie and it was Richard Foster was the lead, you'd be an author who turned into a detective.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been drawn to investigative reporting, and both of those books, even the Betty Page book, is a true crime story.
Well,
On our Facebook page, Boomtown Richmond, we have the link to Southern Nightmare where you can get the book, listen to the podcast, or send Richard an email.
so, soon as this breaks and it's either on HBO or whatever, you need to come back here and tell us the next step. Because I think this is it, man. You've worked really hard, and I'm really proud of you. Richard Foster, Southern Nightmare. You can pick it up anywhere, or just check our Facebook page. We'll direct you right to it. You can get online. Ebook for like less than $7. That's nuts. Thanks for coming down to Boomtown, my friend.